So I remember I cut Oshola and Nick. You were to give us some thoughts before we break. You remember? Yes, I'll give you a quick one, then we continue.
So you were asking how we see equality in those three principles, you or I.
Yes.
And well, here's my thoughts. For me, I see equality in this way that yes, we can exercise whether to call them right or wrong, those principles, we can exercise them,
Yes.
but to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
So the extent in which, or the limit in which we can exercise, but from there, I want to understand how we say what is equality.
Mm-hmm.
Right? For example, can say that I have the liberty to make noise,
Yes.
but to the point now that it causes disturbance to another person,
Mm-hmm.
I have to stop it and consider another person. So that's the equality I'm seeing in that sense.
Okay. So equality comes and stop you from
The limit,
creates limits for freedom,
because when you look
create
at it,
boundaries. Okay.
that's how I see equality.
So equality creates boundary for freedom, giving people limits. Okay. Nick?
I think I think instead of understanding that
Uh-huh.
what the others
Yes.
equality is not accusing freedom.
Is?
It's not like accusing freedom that
Oh.
maybe it's bad. Yeah, let me regulate a little bit or something.
Mm-hmm.
Because that could work also to what the trend is doing is limiting freedom. So I think
Mm-hmm.
really equality is not much focused on wanting to limit freedom or what. It's focused on I want to see if this person is discriminated of. So when it does start to work, like okay, women are facing sexism, when it does start to work, it's in the process it clashes with those in privilege which are men and what they would call their freedom. So it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't focus like I want to see who has more freedom or less. Focuses on who is being discriminated of. Like it's what say there's an equality here, and that shows me that there's a problem. And when it deals with that problem, those in privilege, as a part of action reaction, they will either protest their privilege to remain there or something, and that shows what true freedom is. Then equality to me defines what true freedom is. And at the end of the day, it will ensure that people of all genders, even women, have their freedoms without one of them going against the other or something like that. Consequence. And for department, it is called what? Declaration.
Yeah.
You are declaration.
Yes.
I think that came as a result of equality.
Uh-huh.
Equality is the value that is supposed to be. That it says this and this that all men are created equal and all that and all that. So
Mm-hmm.
it defines how equality operates in this institution of life, blood, empathy, and pursuit of happiness. So it's not much promoting freedom as opposed to promoting equality. I think it promotes equality and it defines how freedoms work with equality. So there is an inherent right that someone is having liberty and not that, but inequality has like taken away that right of having happiness and all that. And then there is a disguise of happiness. Like for example, if someone say, hey nigga, calling someone which is like racist,
Mm-hmm.
and they laugh that they are happy when like they abuse someone. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
hey, and then you just defend and you laugh. So when you go to pursuit of happiness,
Yes.
we can don't categorize that as that person is indeed happy because I think equality tries to objectively explain what happiness looks like, which is more than what you could think as a person that I'm happy by doing this. That's why women could be saying like we love submission and all that. Yeah, it's there when equality is trying to a little bit explain to them that actually that you're not happy, it's a vision, So all these things, equality is trying to, or what we could call standard law, if you say patriarchy has laws and rules, equality also has laws and rules, but also laws are laws of love, which define an objective way of saying what is good, what is happy, and what is all those things, as opposed to the individual saying, I'm happy doing this or that. Because when equality tries to re-educate that person, they realize that really I was suffering even though I was happy last week saying this. And and they will regret that they were not even happy, they was in a disguise of happiness. So I think equality is not regulating freedoms or everything or caring, but it's trying to show in substance their ideal position where all of us we should be, and that is the law of God. The law of God is not dictating, it's not dictatorship that doesn't pass it as it's showing you the ideal position. And the reason why it will throw you out at the end of the day is because you are manifestation of the opposite of that task. With a long run process would threaten these other people who are on the right side. So it's not much more not dictating because we have to separate out the authoritarian leaders could look like and what God look like and how those.
Mm-hmm. So before that, so Nick, in summary, you were saying um, equality help us realize true freedom, where everyone is given the chance to enjoy these rights. So, if, for example, you've given an example of someone who is abusive, or you go out calling people nigger, and you feel that is okay, makes you happy, but on the flip side, it is attacking the other person and denying them the chance to enjoy these three things that you are going for. So you are not seeing it as imposing anything, but weeding out the bad actors in this setup. Okay. So I'll come back to the point of when you say someone might think they are happy today in patriarchy, or and then tomorrow they realize, I was not. The way you're saying, some women says, we like being in a patriarchal system. I like masculine people. And then tomorrow they say, oh, I was wrong yesterday. So I would like to come back to that, but to avoid breaking the thought, we will continue. Yes.
I didn't understand it very clearly, but just for clarity,
Mm.
to me, I think that both sides of equality and freedom
Mm-hmm.
have those three principles.
Both in freedom and in equality, we have these three principles. Yes.
And what makes the difference is how we exercise it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes.
So I just want to stop from there.
You don't want to explain. Okay. So we both have this life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness in equality and in freedom. So can is equality, can you legislate equality? I don't know whether that question is framed well, but is it possible to legislate equality? Set rules? William, can you legislate equality?
I think yes.
Mm-hmm.
In the context, like, but it can only be registration for labor.
Yes, yes.
I mean, in the context of the civility, I think it's possible to set rules that do they don't see the love of the community.
So in the context of civility, umemaliza? Any other person? Will you give us an example so that we understand?
I think we have, like, if you look at the UN statute,
Yes, yes.
we have chapters that have been like had registered to policy on equality. So, and my understanding is that those international laws that are being registered in the context of equality, they can be adopted and then visible also like another country. For example, I think we have in Iceland. Iceland, we have laws that dictates that I mean in any employment setup,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
it must have 50-50 women to men.
Mm-hmm.
They are now part of municipal laws in that country.
Okay. Any other person? Yes, Achal.
That question is very simple in the sense that you're asking if we can achieve equality.
Yes.
And I want to pick one aspect there, or right, I don't know call it life, okay?
Yes, life.
So all people have equal chance
Mhm.
equal right to life.
Yes.
That right to life. Even in our constitution it is there, so it is legislated.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I don't know whether that answer is necessary.
Okay.
We have the article.
So we have laws. So you believe that can be effective, like it can we can legislate that equality through having laws that tells people what to do with theirs and other people's life, liberty, and that your pursuit of happiness, owning things. Okay. Yes, Joy.
I think it is necessary to legislate equality.
It is necessary. Yes.
For example, if you look at the Declaration of Independence,
Yes.
yes, we know that the idea behind, as Nick had explained, was that it was equality because all of you are created equal, so
Yes.
you have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Basically, we all have the freedom, but like we know what happened. Women did not vote. Black people did not have this right. So it was necessary after this fact, after freedom has been given,
Yes.
not to be given, but after this freedom, it is necessary to now come and put laws in place that um, that say that you know these people cannot be discriminated. They are also entitled to these rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Because if you just leave it like that, then I think what comes in is inequality. So I think yes, freedom. I think what cannot be legislated is freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So freedom is there,
Mm-hmm.
but for equality to exist, for equality to be there, it has to be legislated.
It has to be legislated. Okay. So it is necessary to legislate equality. When these people are giving this, when DI was given, after that we still had slavery with that document in place. How will that happen? That they're saying life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, yet still, with them believing in that document, they still have slavery as a systemic problem going on. And I would want to say that a lot of these things, in as much as we simplify them, like life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, they are subject to interpretation at some point. So, for example, during slavery, blacks were not seen as part of the people who are equal. I'm going to use the word equality, who are equal so that they can enjoy the same rights as the whites who are living in that land, or the slave drivers. So it is based on interpretation, and I want to believe that that makes it more complex. The same way now the problem we are dealing with here, to what extent now do you know who is going to say that this is what is best for all of us? Is it best for me or best for all of us, so that we can legislate it? For example, we've seen a lot of problem between the right and the left. The right saying that the left are bringing so much rules that are infringing their freedom. And Nick has said that one of the problems that is identified by that claim is that their privilege is being taken away. The privilege that they used to enjoy before, these legislations that aims to achieve equality are brought to place. So when they lose those privileges, they see it as a negative thing and they complain. And so how do we know that the legislations we are having or we want to put in place does not go back to infringe in an objective way someone's innate rights, inalienable rights? How can we know? Because one of the accusations that they have had is they will give some extreme cases and give them as an example of why those laws are not working for the society and for them. Who has the burden? Is it us or them? When we make laws that tend to disrupt the already set systems, who has the burden to take responsibility if anything does not go right? Yes, Carl.
Okay, the first question, which I will, about how can you say that equality won't infringe,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And
The laws, not necessarily quality, like the laws we are setting up to achieve equality will not, yes, infringe on the individual rights.
well, it's inevitable.
Uh-huh.
They will infringe on your liberties
Uh-huh.
to do whatever you want. Because equality will prevent you from doing things which go against equality. Equality will not allow you, the law, if equality is legislated, it means actions which are contrary to equality and which of course have an effect on people, one or another. Your freedom to do that is limited. You can't do that. As opposed to if there was no legislation on equality, you would get no consequences there would be no infringement. That's at least that's how I understand this issue. That equality ultimately will prevent you from doing actions which you freely want to do. But equality say you not have the freedom to do that.
So is that limiting your right, innate rights, or because Nick is saying no? Nick is saying it is not limiting, it is only removing the part that actually destroys people's rights to enjoy innate rights. So do you suggest that it limits or it doesn't? Limits your innate right for life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Like, are these rights supposed to be enjoyed within a confine, or they just mean you're free?
They're in a conflict. It has to be in a conflict. That's the whole point of even when we see the great controversy.
Yes.
That's what it's all about. Where on one side, on God's side, they're saying, yes, there's freedom, but it has to be within God's law. Then on the other side, they're saying, no, we have the freedom, we are good innately, we don't need any confines. That was what was Lucifer's argument.
Yes,
We
yes,
need no confines because we have it inside ourselves already.
yes,
So, and that's of course a false argument. We need those confines. Those confines are necessary. They are there for a reason. And when you see someone removing those confines, that's when you see what Lucifer did, trying to take away God's authority and putting themselves on the same level as God. In fact, putting themselves above God, not on the same level.
yeah. So one of the mysteries which we say is how sin came to be. That is a mystery because here you are having a perfect heaven where we think libertarianism can work, pure freedom, because there is no sin. So if there is no sin, then does it mean that I will never ever think of harming you? Or I can think of harming you, but there are laws that is preventing me. And now that no one has broken those laws, so there is no sin. I don't know whether you're getting me. So which do you think is the case? Because that is what we are battling with today. We are trying to live in create a world of equality, or trying to perceive what equality looks like. But we are having problems because this world is sinful. So if this world is sinful, then it means we need laws to hinder people from harming or denying other people's rights. But what about a world where there is no sin and still you need laws? So what is it about this freedom? Where can it work? Or why is it even something that people can think about if it can't even work in a perfect world like heaven? Nick?
I think the law in heaven before sin and all that uh, is not that. I believe that law, I think it is, or everything could can be explained objectively. And objectively means there is a standard
Mm-hmm.
kind of operation that things work. And that standard rule is what God calls the law of God. And those laws are not even like God saying these are the laws and those laws are universal, and they are universal means they even the universe itself, the universe when they say created all the creation operates in a certain order, which if that order is broken, then things begin to crumble one by one, like they tend to death, let's say, collision by themselves. That's why we usually say, no, this is not God saying if and who would submit, it is a consequence or something. It's a standard of operation that if broken, logically derives another ending, and that ending is not good longer. So those laws in heaven, if it's objectively explained, if you can explain objectively, it means that everyone wanting freedom or whatever they do has to enter, like has to match with that rule in a sense. Not that it's there then you want to match it. Like this is standard operation. And even we usually say when we go to identity of gender identity is subjective. We I feel this one, then we have to listen to the person to tell us their pronouns, and it's not actually like throwing out the objectively. Objectively is standard beyond them that it says it argues that this person has the right to point out that way objectively as well, even if it's subjective um, um, identities. Someone has to say without someone defining for them. So I think that law in heaven, the law of God, is a standard law which is not rigid. It's a law of love, and I think next outside it says we have to ask ourselves what law of love means at the end of the day. Because law of love means love is something good anyway. And therefore, what you are required to keep as this law, so the Ten Commandments, any other law is love in itself. It's maybe you are a little bit confused, maybe something like that could happen, but he should guide you to come up to light to know what happened. But what Satan was doing, Lucifer, was not actually saying, let's throw away laws and be free. What Lucifer was, he was doing that in a disguise because at the end of the day, that was slavery in itself. Because all those 1/3 of angels and anyone became enslaved to Satan, as opposed to those ones who were remaining 2/3 were not enslaved to God. So what Satan used, I think libertarians are using as well, is as if it's freedom, but about it's not true freedom. It's a distorted kind of freedom, which that means patriarchy at the end of the day. So it's patriarchy really, but explained in a very cunning way of freedom. That's why they say we don't want slavery because that's what God is saying. We don't want slavery. So they use us. We don't want slavery. Enslaved to the law. Us, Brazilians, Lucifer side, we want freedom. And God is saying the same thing. We want freedom. We don't want slavery. So they are arguing the same way, so that it brings confusion even with how we understand today. Because we think they are saying there is freedom, and us we kind of enslaved to somebody doing things. But themselves are in slavery at the end of the day, and this side is freedom much. So, yeah.
So you've before Jeff, you've said that it is a disguise. The kind of freedom proclaimed by libertarians is a disguise. So in essence, you're saying we can't be fully free, because if under God, Lucifer could see that they were under the law, so they lack freedom to do things and everything they want. So Lucifer says we are being enslaved under the God's law. But when they get out, all these angels get enslaved under Lucifer. So the question I'm battling with is it always the case for humanity to fall onto something? Because you are saying if today if they say that we are enacting laws, for example, you should not refuse to sell something to somebody based on their tribe or gender, and then they are saying that law is oppressive. When you lift that law, they default back to patriarchy, which is inequality. So is it that binary that we have to fall to something? We are in patriarchy. If we eliminate this, then we get to another thing. Is it the case for human nature? So as you think, Jeff, I'll give you a short time.
Mine is to the question about why do we need law in a perfect world?
Yes.
And I guess it's because of I think it's because of the concept of free will. So, yes, it's a perfect world, but if there is free will, that means there's always a possibility of someone making a choice of doing things differently. So, in order to protect that perfect world, we will need a law.
To protect that perfect world, because there is free will, and free will mean you have a choice, and those choices in most cases they are 1v1, like they can't coexist well. If I choose this, then I mean I sacrifice the other one. So to protect this, we have the laws. Okay, I want us to read GC 493.2. Yes.
But that statement means now there is no free will. But if you choose something that is against the law, maybe you find it. So that perfect one that
Free will. Okay, there is that complexity. Yeah, I get you. So there is that, you can synthesize that as we go to GC 493.2. Nick mentioned the law of God to be objective and for the good. And I want us to read that, then I want to make a case of this objectivity. Yeah. Because we are comparing patriarchy versus equality, and we are also discussing freedom in between. So I want us to read that, and then I'll make a case for the issue of objectivity of the law. GC, who is there, can read. 493.2, paragraph 2. Mm-hmm.
The law of love being the foundation of the government of God,
Mm-hmm.
the happiness of all created beings depends upon the perfect accord with these principles of righteousness. God desires that all his creatures, the service of love, moment that springs from an intelligent appreciation of his God. He takes no pleasure in opposed allegiance, but to all he grants freedom and will, that they may render him voluntary service.
Thank you. So this law is the foundation, and it is the source of happiness for all creatures and everything that exists. And this law does not include forced allegiance. Kidogo. So the law does not, the law of love being the foundation of government of God, the happiness of all created beings depend upon their perfect accord with the great principle of righteousness. So I don't know what that great principle of righteousness is. If someone has read and thought about it, can tell us. God desires from all his creatures the service of love, homage that springs from an intelligent appreciation of God's character. He takes no pleasure in forced allegiance, and to all he grants freedom of will that they may render him voluntary service. So you have the choice. And Linda is saying, if the choice has consequences, then is it really a choice? Forced, like implemented. Yeah, of course, implemented consequence, not a natural consequence. So, for example, throwing Lucifer out of heaven. Okay, so you can think about that. And it is saying there is no forced allegiance. God does not glory in that. Does that mean that if God does not, that is like dictatorship. It is saying it is opposite of dictatorship, that law of love. It requires voluntary and intelligent appreciation of God's character. So first you need to understand what God's character is, and then appreciate what it is. So I said I'm coming back to the issue of objectivity. And when I'm here in the law of God, we're still battling with understanding what that means. But I want us to take us to what is happening today in what we understand. So it is saying intelligent appreciation of God's character. So for you to appreciate God, first there is an aspect of understanding who God is, and then you give without force that allegiance to God. And that reminds me of what we used to discuss before, which is the nature of human being. So we have this. There is a battle here. So under higher power, we have one is intellect. Another one is will. Another one is what Ellen White is saying, that this type of obedience, which is not forced, has to do what? Has to appreciate all this. You have to use this. You have to understand and give the will without being forced. And of course, that will mean your conscience is clear. You have a clear conscience when you are doing that. So there is a battle, because I want to pick this one and discuss it today. We've talked about will and consciousness. So I want to take intellect and try to talk about it before we get back to this. So I will define intellect. I will define it as the ability to think, yes? It's okay. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. And God. Yes. Yeah. Back to a principle. So you are asking whether this love as given in GC is it is GC 490? 493.2. So you're asking whether that love, the source of it, is what Christ was describing to be, and you're asking whether it is the same thing that used to exist in heaven before it was renamed into policies for the Jewish people to meet their context. It's a question or a comment? Comment? Both. So we can think about, if you can write. So intellect is the ability to think, reason, and understand abstract concept. And it is a power. That's why we call it one of the higher powers. It's a cognitive power that allows a person to analyze, synthesize, and apply information logically. It is the capacity to apply and process information. So you have an information, it's like a machine. The intellect is like a machine, something which is here. So you have all this information you've gathered. And then when they pass through here, there is a result. And this result can come into what you believe or what you are doing. It leads to actions and beliefs when it passes at that point. So intellect depends on knowledge. it highly depends on knowledge as a raw material. It depends, it depends on knowledge as a raw material to produce results or to work with and then produce results. So one of the things that intellect uses is logic. So Nick will say that if you are living in patriarchy, it is because your mind is clouded not to see the benefits of living a life of equality. So, and then you will give benefits of equality and then expect someone to buy and join you. So whatever you are doing is that you are trying to add information to this person so that when you invoke logic, they can agree with you to do what you are trying to persuade them to do. Because in God's kingdom, we operate with love and persuasion, not force. Love and persuasion. God called Lucifer a number of times. I think I read that in GC, and discussed the problems with what Lucifer was doing. And then Lucifer did not buy it, so the persuasion failed. So they were kicked out. I don't know whether that is force or it was an inevitable thing to do. But God's love will work with persuasion. So where the problem comes when you are dealing with people who believe in patriarchal setup is there is a fluid ground when you are talking about intellect, because it depends on knowledge, and this knowledge, it is hard to be objective with it. So I want to define knowledge so that we work with it knowing what we are doing. So I will say knowledge is a collection of facts, information, and skills. So knowledge, a collection of facts or information and skills. I will want to stick with facts and information because I don't think we're dealing with skills. So that is what knowledge is. And someone will say it is a fact that having a marriage of equality is better than having a marriage of inequality. Says that a fact. And then you prove by saying that you see in that other end you can abuse someone and do all those things. But here, we maintain autonomy and people have the freedom to exist the way they want, as long as they are not infringing on other person's rights and inalienable rights. So, the problem with that is that is subjective unless you are dealing with things like maths. For example, when you're dealing with maths, you know 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. So the information is 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. You follow logic and you get the same result, all of you. But now when it's come to what we call informal logic, for example, ethics, politics, and personal beliefs, it becomes difficult because a person from patriarchy will come to you with all this. We know how to solve conflicts. It is more predictable to exist in a setup system where you are given all the templates of what to do. You have the gender roles. So when they come with that as an information and they invoke logic, they get the result, which is inequality or patriarchy is good. And then they can also come and tell you how it can be chaotic to exist in a world where there is no laws guarding marriage, especially the way they have laid laws, patriarchal laws. So it is unpredictable. You have someone, you don't know how they're going to behave. You don't know whether they can choose tomorrow to leave you, but in a patriarchal setup, there are clear rules of when to leave someone. So they will come with those information and then they tell you that is what we believe. So what I'm wondering is, where is the problem? Where is the real problem? Is it just intellect? Because you can have all this wrong, but you are using higher power. And by wrong, I'm supposing that there is an objective right thing to do. For example, in our case, we are saying equality. So this person can have all the information, all the knowledge. And by the way, sources of knowledge are many, including life experiences. So these people have lived in equality, they have tried it, and they have seen it, it's sustaining their society. So that becomes a knowledge that, despite all its problems, if the goal for me is to have a stable or a society that is not disruptive, then I'm going to go with this, which is more predictable and has rules of what to do. So, Carl, you're raising your hand before I continue.
Yeah.
Before you forget.
Yes, thank you. I had a thought.
Yes.
I think when I look at evidence for equality,
Yes.
that's what I can call it in a scientific and in a, let's say, as unbiased as possible. Of course, we have biases.
Yes.
But as unbiased as possible.
Uh-huh.
You look at the facts, look at the data on which has been done regarding societies which have more equal laws.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of social science studies on this over the last hundreds of years.
Yes.
It's not straight. There's a lot of information.
Mm-hmm.
And if we were to deal purely on intellect, and in my,
Yes.
if we were to deal purely on intellect,
Yes.
as I see the science and the research which has been done on this, I think you would have to come to one conclusion, which is that equality is better for society.
Okay.
I think the scientific method will not allow you to come to another conclusion. Not because the scientific method itself will force you, but because you don't have predetermined results which you are trying to look for.
Yes.
Whatever the results show you is what you will go for, right? And in that case, the results show that societies where there's fair laws, equality like this, they are far better functioning than these which are not. So I would doubt either the intellectual honesty or the intellectual capacity of someone who tries to make an argument from an intellectual perspective that patriarchy is better than equality. I don't think there's much of there's a genuine intellectual argument, stronger argument for hierarchy or patriarchy as opposed to equality. I think either the person is intellectually dishonest or their intellect, they are not actually as smart as they act, as they think they are. They have missed some fact somewhere, or they already have something they're trying to prove at the end. So I just wanted to make that point to say that at least because you are asking what is the problem.
Yes.
Here.
Where is so you are saying the problem is intellectual dishonesty or lack of enough information to make the right decisions. For example, if you find someone who has not read those things, all they have is their lived experience and perhaps the distorted notion of when some people try to live in 50-50, not even 50, that is not equality, try to live in a life free from patriarchy, and then all these problems came to them. So they say, look, that is the problem. They are not looking at the objective truth. So I'll mark that. While I see, and I see that, I still believe that, so if you're talking about scientific, for example, perspectives, if it is scientific, someone will ask you, when you are doing that study, what are you looking for? For example, you are studying a society that is egalitarian, a society that is pro-equality. They might not embrace it fully, but that is all we have. So you can compare a deeply sexist and patriarchal society like Afghanistan with Western country that is more liberal and gives people freedom and autonomy despite their gender, race, age, and all that. So what are you going to use as a parameter? Is it happiness? Is it the consistency of this society? Or what is the parameter?
I think one of them would be happiness.
So happiness of the individual.
Yes.
Okay.
You survey individuals, how happy are they with their government? How happy are they with the services which they are getting? How valued do they feel in their society?
Mm-hmm.
And overwhelmingly, you will see on such surveys which countries are at the top.
In happiness list.
Yes. With Scandinavian countries.
Yes.
Question is how happy are they? How satisfied are they with their government and the laws? Because issues of equality and patriarchy, it's about how the government is treating its citizens, right?
Yes.
So I was just saying that as someone who also added and helped on these studies, over and over again, you see where people are asked individually, how do they feel about their lives? How do they feel about how their government is taking care of them as citizens? How is the government using their taxes? And these are countries where you find they're taxed more than other places where they're taxed less,
true.
but they're even happier. Yeah, it is almost a no-brainer, that question, as far as happiness. But there are other metrics.
Yes.
You can look at fertility of pregnancies. You can look at such metrics, or more of them. I don't have them in my mind, but there are many which you can look at, and many times you find the same thing over and over and over again.
Okay. Any other thought on that before I proceed? Any other thought? So Carl is saying we can use happiness index to determine a society that embraces or tries to embrace equality versus the one that is patriarchal.
Because that's what we are contrasting. Maybe there's a better way.
Yeah.
Maybe you can say unequal, but I guess equality and patriarchy works.
In?
So I know it sounds strange.
Yes.
To me,
Yes.
because maybe if you ask other countries, they won't say our problems are patriarchy.
Yeah.
They say our problem is
Corruption.
They say our problem is immigrants.
Yes.
They say our problem is that community of people.
Yes.
Things like this.
Yes.
They might not necessarily say patriarchy.
Yes.
So that's what I wanted to say. That's a complexity. But I guess for the sake of this study, we're talking about equality and patriarchy.
Yes. Okay. So that is true. I wanted to point out that scientific perspective is just one way of acquiring knowledge, which the intellect highly depend on to give you a result of what you believe and what you are doing. So, the way Carla said, these people can take people to take a survey and ask them some question that's supposed to depict whether they are happy or they are not happy, and then they will end up with the result. But there are other things, for example, that you can't put on that level. For example, when you're dealing with the human mind, when we get to the nitty-gritties, for example, of human mind, when someone come and tell you that, prayer works, and someone say prayer does not work, those are two different people. Or someone say meditation works, and another one says meditation does not work. Those are subjective individual experiences that it is so difficult for you to put on a scale or on a scientific method apart from just taking it from what the person is saying and see whether there is an improvement in their behavior or in their health. So things like emotion, intention, and things dealing with the mind, it's so difficult to put them on a scientific perspective. Yes, we have methods, psychology, which is trying, but there are things, for example, I've said meditation, there is no way you can clearly see. It is more subjective, and you get individuals, they do it, you see the same result, and then come up with the conclusion. Yes, before I continue.
So they don't. People are very quiet, so let me just go.
It's okay.
Sorry. I think with prayer,
Yes,
even meditation,
yes,
I don't think it's that subjective. I think if we were to ask the right questions, once a person says prayer works,
Yes.
the other one says prayer doesn't work, you ask them, okay, why do you say prayer works? How do you pray? What do you expect? All those things. And then you ask the other person, how do you pray? And all those things. I think if you do that, you compare and contrast, you'll be able to come to see an answer. It won't be an objective answer which can be replicated on different people.
yes.
If you see the patterns. So I also think even things like prayer, you can't get to an objective answer, solution.
Okay, but I think you said it's subjective, so it can't be replicated. Your answer will be different from mine.
It can't be replicated.
Okay.
So that makes it objective.
Scientific. Because scientific is dealing with...
Okay, scientific can't be... scientific is the one which is replicable, but I thought objective, when you talk about objective, it's the same. Because when it's objective, it's not... It doesn't depend on your experience.
Yes.
Something objective is just for everyone, I think.
And I'm arguing it depends on your experience.
And I was saying, if I ask you,
Yes.
what is your experience?
Yes.
And I find out all the reasons why your experience is what it is, and I compare and contrast this with 2, 3 other experiences,
Yes.
you can find an objective.
Oh,
Why
okay.
your experience is like that, and I can tell you, you're together with 3 people like this. You're not so special. You and other people, you have the same problem. That's what I'm saying. So it ceases to be subjective.
Okay. Okay. Yes, John. 2 minutes. 1 minute. Okay. So I didn't even know that is happening. So we can discuss that later about the mind. But I wanted to say that when you're talking about scientific, it is something that has a formula that, despite who you are, it's supposed to work. So if you mix this thing with this thing, this is going to happen. That is more scientific. When you come to more social and internal problems like what's dealing with your mind and relationships, it becomes more of people's experience than having a clear formula of, if you do this, this is going to happen. And yes, you can see that when you go to the hospital, you are having a malaria, they know that this is a virus and we give you this and this works. But when you go there and you're troubled, it has to be more personalized and they understand where is this coming from, and it is more tedious than the other one. And of course, we have the environment. So what I'm trying to say is that when we are dealing with knowledge, it is more than the empirical scientific formulas that we are going to use to say that this is a reality. A reality can be there. It might not be true, but it is a reality. For example, that person in a patriarchal setup will tell you this thing is working. You know, there is no way, if you come and see it from your perspective, you're saying no, but they will say that is why we are having peace, because we never quarrel on who is going to do the dishes or who is going to bring food. So it becomes more subjective. And to deal with that problem, you have to acknowledge that that can build into their knowledge, and then they can use that to make a conclusion of whether to believe or not to believe that thing. So it might be flatly wrong. The way there are other things that are flatly wrong, but people relate to them to the point that they have made them their own reality. And in that sense, to deal with that person, you have to acknowledge that in that perspective, so that you have a more common ground to deal with that. So I'll finish. We've talked about a lot of things. So yeah, we are talking about the marriages, the patriarchal marriage and the marriage of equality. And we've seen some of the arguments of patriarchy when it was introduced, why it worked in quote, and how still we are battling with understanding what a perfectly equal world is, things to do with the will, where does that leave our freedom, and if our freedom clashes with the other person, do we need to be checked? And if we are checked, are we creating another system that is going to, that might get out of hand and act like the patriarchal system that denies people the individuality? So, and then of course we've come to the issue of higher power and the lower power and the intellect, the source of knowledge, to form an argument why you cannot only rely on saying that this is logical, because even logic has flaws, intellect depends on knowledge, which has different sources. Some are difficult even to measure. So that is the complexity we are dealing with today. In the world of equality and marriage, where do we put, how do we implement boundaries to avoid harming while still maintaining people's ability to enjoy life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness? We'll close questions in the afternoon. Tutaomba. We thank you, God, for this session. We've tried to learn a lot of things about marriages and relationships, equality, patriarchy, and even our internal working of the nature of intellect. There are still a lot of things we are grappling with, but we believe that by following your way, we will come to clearer and clearer conclusions for the betterment of our lives. As we proceed to the lunch break, we still invite your presence. In Jesus' name we pray.